Break the law? Sure thing boss, sign here please, by user Page 614. Long-time stalker, first-time poster. Only doing this now because it finally came to fruition last week. I used to work as a spare parts estimator for a fairly niche industry. My job was essentially to work out what parts of our main product the customer wanted, find out how much it would cost us to make, add a little markup and send them a quote. My boss was pretty strict on traceability, so everything needed to be recorded, including why a certain markup had been applied to a particular product. Normal value of these quotes is somewhere between £200 and a few $100,000. Very rarely do we get orders for anything more than that, once or twice a decade in my experience. A request for quotation landed on my desk when I was WFH during COVID, and it was a biggie. Just looking at the list of parts the customer wanted, this was going to be an absolute killer, over £1 million all by itself. I was told by the sales guy that if this one went well, there was another to follow of an even bigger size, ultimately looking at 10 million over the next 4 years. So I set to work. Normally I can do 5 or 6 of these quotes in a day, but this one quote took me 6 weeks to put together. I was in constant contact with 20 plus vendors getting specifications, technical details, prices, and lead times for over 400 items. Finally, my masterpiece was complete. Then came the snag. Sales guy then says that because of the country this customer is in, they need to have 4 or more quotes in from different customers in order to get it cleared by their government, some anti-corruption policy that had been instituted. We were the OEM of the product and there's nowhere else on the planet they could get these parts from, so we'd have to work through third parties to get it done, and he knew just the guy. In comes a one-man band with a dodgy-looking entry at company's house to save the day. Sales guy and him go way back, so he was going to be the preferential supplier. I was asked to do the normal quote to him, then to bump the prices up by 30% and send that to 3 other companies who had been asking about it so they would absolutely not get the contract with the end user. I argued the point, saying that the whole purpose of the anti-corruption policy is to prevent situations exactly like this, but I was overruled. The coup of the company now tells me to just do it over a phone call, at which point I request that in writing before I go ahead and do it. Fast forward 2 years and there's still no order been placed. Then I find out through a different sales guy that the one-man band has been put on a blacklist by this country's government over this project, the other 3 companies have been turned down, and the end user is asking other companies to come in and take our product out and replace it with their own. A huge investigation is called for by senior management, my quote is ripped to pieces and examined in microscopic detail, and the question gets asked, why did you give different prices to these other 3 when you knew it was all to do with anti-corruption? We should fire you. That's millions of pounds of order you've lost us. Out comes the email from my little black book, on the desk it goes, everyone suddenly gets very quiet, and the coup starts packing his desk in a box the next week. And the moral of the story is, if someone tells you to do something borderline illegal, make sure to get it in writing. Edit. Wow. This really went crazy, thank you so much guys. My first silver too. For those asking about the legality of what I did, because all of the third parties were outside of the country where the anti-corruption policy was in place, I didn't personally break any laws. Whilst the anti-corruption policies are in place for the end user, the worst the government can do is put us on a blacklist so all of our bids in the future are either refused outright or looked at in far more detail than others might be. I did investigate this at the time, and if there were going to be any implications on me that my company wouldn't have been responsible for, it would have been a flat no. I was acting against the intention of the policy, but not expressly breaking it. Do not do something illegal just because your boss told you to. The issue as far as the company was concerned was the lost millions in revenue and the damage to their reputation. The end user is a huge company with contacts and is in a reasonably close-knit industry, people talk. They ultimately wanted a scapegoat to parade in front of the board to explain why the multi-million-pound deal they'd all been talking about for the last 2 years had suddenly vanished. I did also look at OEM angle at the time, but because we aren't the only company who make this type of product, it didn't appear to be possible to use this as an exception, the reasoning being that the option existed to replace our system with a competitor's. Edit 2. After posting this, I did a bit of research into the final customer, and their VP of Finance did some fairly well publicized jail time a few years back for buying an oil rig for the company at a suspiciously low price, so there was no way we would have been able to convince the government that everything was above board with a direct sale. Restaurant only gives discount on phone orders, okay then, by user Vivabiza. I only live 5 minutes walk away from a local pizza place, so I went in and ordered direct to take away. I didn't call ahead as I didn't see much point as I lived so close and I didn't mind the extra couple of minutes. While there I saw they were doing a special offer. 10% discount if you mentioned their promotion over the phone and then went in to collect takeaway. I know I haven't called in first, but now I know you do a discount if you do, and to save us both the hassle of me calling you right now and for the fact I know the promotion exists, can I still get the 10% off anyway? No. It's for telephone orders only. Sure, I get that, but I could literally just call you right now from my mobile and you'd give me the discount, but that'll be a bit weird to make me do that, so can I just get it anyway? No. It's for telephone orders only. This job's worth attitude pissed me off, so I was literally about to just forget about buying anything from there and go somewhere else, but as I got outside I figured that no, I'd just stand outside and call the number on their door and order a pizza that way to get my discount. The phone rang and the same guy picked it up. Can I order a pizza to collect with 10% discount please? He recognizes my voice obviously as it's just been 15 seconds since we were speaking inside. He looks outside at me. I smile and wave. He looks pissed off that he has given me my discount now. He takes my order and says it will be 10 minutes. During the next 10 minutes while waiting for my discounted pizza, someone else is about to come in the restaurant to order a takeout. I ask them if they have phoned ahead for the discount or not. They didn't realize that was a thing. No problem buddy, I'll do it for you. What do you want? I call the same number again, same guy answers and hears my voice again and looks straight at me again. I smile and wave again and proceed to order this random stranger's pizza order for them whilst maintaining eye contact with him. My friend would also like the 10% telephone discount. He looks like he's gonna pop a blood vessel but has no choice but to accept it. After all, I didn't enforce the rules, he did. A week later, the telephone order discount is cancelled completely and it's simply given if you have a menu, and there are menus in the entrance anyway, so you'd be crazy not to see it and use it. Edit, well that blew up. Answering a few of the main questions here. This happened a while ago, so the promotion wasn't to do with Google Ads, or tracking info or storing numbers etc. It was just a badly executed promo that forced you to call to the very person stood in front of you already taking your order anyway if you wanted the discount. No, not been waiting 15 years to tell this story like I'm some sort of legend and my life peaked at that moment. I read something else on Reddit yesterday and I was like, oh yeah, I remember something like that happening to me and I've never posted in MC before, so why not share? The guy behind the counter wasn't a kid with management breathing down his neck. He may have even been the owner or manager for all I know. It was a small place and not a chain, and if it wasn't just him there doing everything, then it was only him and the chef. So making me call him on the phone in front of him was him enforcing the stupid rule. I just complied with it. I agree, I risked a spat on pizza. I don't suggest pissing off people who make your food. It was not something I was thinking of at the time though. I've also tweaked some text above for clarity as reasons why for not calling in first, lived super local and I'd only ever walked in, never called it before, and realized now that I didn't know about the promo until there. That's why I then asked about it. Thank you. I altered my uniform to comply with the dress code in my employee handbook, by user left 0 center. Back when I, now a 37F, was younger with a lot of attitude and a loud mouth, I worked for a nice Italian restaurant in my hometown. I didn't have a single issue with management until 7 months into my employment when a male manager joined the team. He was a bit of a misogynist. He would make backhanded comments about women, and he only had issues with the female staff. He wrote me up for some ridiculous reasons, one being opening the dock door too hard, when it was a heavy steel door that you had to put some muscle into to open. He fired another lady who was pregnant for asking to be put in a section closest to the kitchen. She filed a lawsuit and won too. One day, I walked into work. He pulled me into the office immediately and presented me with a write-up slip. It was because I was not wearing a belt. The dress code stated if pants have belt loops, a belt must be worn. Okay, my uniform that day didn't comply with the dress code. The issue was that I hadn't worn a belt in 7 months while he and the other managers never mentioned it. In my opinion, the appropriate thing to say would have been, hey, I see you haven't been wearing a belt and we haven't been enforcing it. Dress code says you must wear a belt if you have belt loops. I'll give you X amount of days to purchase one before I start enforcing. I just got a straight write-up. So I went home and cut off all the belt loops off all of my work pants. The next day, immediately upon walking in, he asked where my belt was. I pointed to my pants and said, where are my belt loops? The employee handbook stated if there are belt loops, but I no longer had belt loops. Let's just say it didn't make him like me anymore, but I felt like a hero standing up to him in such a petty manner. You want HR involved? Yep, you can have HR, by user Little Lewis known. This is a story of how hate blinds you. I work in radiology. About 15 plus years ago I was working with a radiographer, X-ray tech, called Smith. Now Smith had recently received 2 official warning of duty. One for abusing the boss and one for abusing me. Smith was told to change their attitude and behave. Smith however went on a path of revenge that was endless. I was dying a death of 1,000 tiny paper cuts. Nothing terrible but just lots of little things which I knew Smith had done but I couldn't prove it. One Monday morning one of the A&E doctors came over to complain about how poor the X-ray image quality was a couple nights ago. Smith goes over the roster board and sees my name corresponding to that shift. You worked afternoon shift by yourself. Smith charges into the boss's office demanding a full complaint process. Smith demands since clearly the boss and I have it in for them, HR should run it independently. The boss tries to talk Smith out of it but Smith basically say they don't trust the boss to deal with me fairly. The boss tells Smith he will hand it over but be careful of what you ask for. Apparently Smith was in quite a lather and so excited that they had got me. 2 days later I'm been interviewed by 2 HR guys and an independent chief radiographer from another hospital. We go through each of the images and I agree the work is really poor. It's clear no one has actually looked too carefully at the paperwork with the X-ray images. The HR guys finally asks why did you such poor work? I reply I didn't and if they bothered to look on the online pay system I had called in sick that day. In fact Smith had done the overtime shift. They looked stunned. I reminded them I expected the same process for Smith. I also lodged an official complaint about false allegations be made by Smith for this case. Apparently Smith tried to stick to the roster but they showed Smith their pay slip plus that they had signed off on all the images. While HR was deciding what to do with Smith, fire them or not, Smith had 2 more incidents at work and was eventually fired. Edit, answer to some of your question. 1. When Smith got fired HR went to town and dug up every little bit of dirt on Smith so they couldn't claim wrongful dismissal. HR had a 3-step process in reviewing all formal complaints. First, interview all parties with an independent. Decide if there is a case and have a HR tribunal meeting with union involvement and lastly make a finding. They were hopeless. I could write 400 pages about HR and crap that went down. I found out the head of HR rose through the ranks over 30 years starting as a 16-year-old who hadn't finished high school. Started working in the 1970s. HR had no access to RIS or PACS. The chief radiographer who was independent had no prior chance to review stuff. Merely an expert for image quality. The chief worked for the organization at another site hence no privacy issue as we shared a PACS. Use of radiographic markers? Always do but Smith got caught using mine by me. Took it to HR who told me Smith hadn't technically broken policy. I purchased generic R&L markers after that and so did half the staff. I also caught Smith eating my lunch and HR told me Smith hadn't done anything wrong technically because I hadn't labeled my lunch. Come time to fire Smith and they were over this like a rash. My boss was well aware of who worked and was happy to deal with it but Smith wanted HR. My boss was more than happy to see Smith dig themselves an almighty hole. Did Smith take bad X-rays on purpose? I don't think so. I think Smith's mental health was crashing at this point. The work reflected their mental health. I think Smith saw the complaint and was quite manic and thought I will get OP. Smith simply had overlooked the overtime they did. Oh, it was the worst time in my career. It was tough every day. I mean really tough. Boss demands productivity, by user Satanstad.iowu. My current job is a simple one and nice as it is WFH, receive work to file digitally, upload said documents, repeat. The expected productivity according to my boss is laughably easy achievable by myself, however, others on my team seem to only be able to complete what is expected. Keeping things vague beck my command is large and I'd prefer to vent safely. Anyways, every day I achieve above average uploads, like I said, it's super easy for me. I don't do too much over the top and generally can complete my whole workload, accurately, within a max of 4 hours every day. This leaves a lot of time to myself. I always stay by my computer however in case my boss or a coworker needs help with other things. Just this past week however, I have been reprimanded for productivity issues. Basically being told I need to be doing something at all times and that the time gaps in no work is unacceptable. This comes after having worked in this fashion for the last 10 months by the way. So, my boss demands that when I am clocked in, my upload records must always show that I have recently done something, and that there cannot be a gap in uploads longer than 10 minutes unless I'm clocked out. Basically demanding I do more work for the same amount of pay. Well, my solution is to set a timer that goes off on my phone every 3.5 minutes telling me to complete one upload. So now I do the exact same amount of work over the course of 8 hours instead of 4. Don't want to pay me more for doing 3x as much work as others? I'm not putting the effort in then. It's silly to think I would. P.S. Sorry if this is slightly ranty or incoherent, I'm tired as hell and pretty upset at being reprimanded for being efficient.